It's time for a brand new episode of the Bakery Bears video show.
This is our lifestyle show featuring craft, baking, and a little bit of history.
We've got lots of projects to show and one of our special series to share.
What will we feature this time, and which of our projects will be our favourite?
Let's get on with the show and find out.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show. We're back
We are?
with perhaps the answer to the question we've all been asking. Is there a perfect DK weight sock? Have we all been getting it wrong all these years? Does the answer not lie with fingering weight, but in fact with DK?
Well, we shall see.
It is a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I've been doing lots and lots of research and thinking and pondering and all of that business, and knitting.
And I've been doing lots of wearing.
Yeah.
And so combined, I think that puts us in a very strong position to be able to give you quite a good answer to that question.
Exciting.
That is coming up later on in the show. It is very exciting. Now, also, another really exciting thing is, if you like dogs,
Yes.
then I think perhaps this episode might be for you. My Perfect Socks might just be inspired, the yarn that Kay's dyeing, by a lovely doggy, perhaps.
Yes.
We shall find out later on in the show.
Yes.
But that is just the start of the fun and games, because you've got two amazing What's Off Your
I
Needles.
do.
One of which
Yeah.
is the 100-acre blanket.
Yes, indeedy. I finished it in very short order after last time's show.
And,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean...
so pleased that you're excited.
Yeah, it's been a long journey with the blanket, and...
It's nerves
Nerves were
no one's going to
high.
like this.
No, I always think people won't like anything I do. It's just an inherent insecurity, I suppose. But yeah, I've had some fantastic feedback about the blanket. Lots of people very excited to start one. So that's just been brilliant. Thank you all so much. And I'll show you the finished blanket a bit later.
First bit of the pattern, 3rd of June.
Yes, 3rd of June.
That's the first bit with tutorial videos and
When you can
summer
be
of
casting
stitching.
on your first square. Very excited.
Speaking of summer of stitching content, we went out to film in our own little 100-acre wood, didn't we?
We did.
And my goodness, the weather was spectacular.
Gosh, it was a really, really warm day. We've had odd weather lately. It's really cooled down now, but we had a few days of it being hot, not just warm, but hot, high 20s.
Completely spectacular.
Yeah.
And you can take a look. Did you hear all those lovely birds?
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of birds.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So when we go out for walks, we always think, oh, what's that bird? What's that bird? So I finally got a bird app, and it was a free one. And it's called Merlin.
Bird ID.
Merlin Bird ID.
That's it.
And it's been put together by the Cornell University. And it's brilliant. All you do is you just press this button on your phone, and your phone listens, and it knows where you are because it's got your location. So it knows what birds will likely be in the area. And then it listens, and it tells you what birds it can hear, and it lists them down. So every morning now, when I open the window in our bedroom, I've been listening. And this morning there was a blackcap, a gold crest, was it?
Yeah.
A house sparrow, blue tit, robin, blackbird.
And a dodo.
And a wood pigeon. And a dodo, yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful.
It's really cool.
Totally changed our appreciation, I think, of just having the window open. I mean, it's so silly because we've always enjoyed listening to birds and things, and we've got reasonably good, or certainly I have, with all the series over the years, with the walking series and things like that, of spotting things. I remember the most exciting thing I've seen and heard is a tree creeper, and we looked up a tree creeper, and it's got a lovely call.
We did look up a tree creeper, yeah. And because that's the other thing you can do. There's a whole list of all the birds, and you can look them up, and you can play what their birdsong is in their calls.
And the other one that you got really excited about was the northern lapwing.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember the first time I saw a northern lapwing was that walk that I
Yes.
did where I went out to the cairn.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were spiralling down.
The most beautiful bird you've ever seen. Look up a northern lapwing, and it looks black, I suppose, from a distance,
Yeah.
but its wings are just like this myriad of colours. Just absolutely beautiful.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
It does sound like a dinosaur. A lot of these birds sound like dinosaurs.
That's because they...
I've been reading a book, it's really fascinating, but obviously, well, not obviously, people might not know, but birds basically are dinosaurs, and crocodiles are also dinosaurs. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, so's Nano Endy, she's a dinosaur.
And my mum's older than Nano Endy.
Look! Less dinosaurs and more action, because we've got some lovely projects to show you, and we're building up, of course. This is all the sort of hors d'oeuvre, the amuse-bouche.
Amuse-bouche.
Before we get to...
Don't get that.
No, I had one once at Nano Wendy's, at my mum's, and all I know is it had something to do with cheese and a Cape gooseberry. I didn't like it.
I thought it was like a bit of sorbet or something to cleanse your palate or in between things. Am I getting that wrong?
No. Well, an amuse-bouche is something between...
It's an amusing mouthful or something, isn't it?
It was. I was amused by the mouthful, let me tell you. But trust me, it's the first and last time I ever had an amuse-bouche.
Can you imagine if I pulled out something like that at tea time?
Forget it.
You'd be like,
What?
What's this now?
Where's my dinner? That's terrible. Look, yes, there's too many amazing projects to show you before we build up to our pick of the projects later on in the show. So without further ado, I shall say, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Right, so the first thing on my needles is a past pick of the projects, actually. But it's now, it's a larger project, so you do get to that stage, don't you, where you're still enjoying something, but it's not kind of right up there.
Something else has become the pickety-pick of the projects.
Something else has become the pickety-pick of the projects. But yeah, this is what I'm calling my faded advent blanket that I've been working on. And actually, I'm not too far from finishing this now, and I really want
Miranda's
to...
mum.
This
is what I call...
Yeah, this is what I call my faded advent blanket, yeah. So I showed this maybe a couple of shows ago, and I've just been working on it steadily since then. It's still been my end of day kind of treat project to work on, and I think I've pretty much worked on it every evening. And I've got 3 more coloured stripes to do, and I think that just leaves me 2 of the contrast stripes. So let me show you where this is up to, and then I'll tell you how it works. The one thing about this blanket, right, that I wish I'd done, and it's only because of that centre colour here, I wish I'd used a pale grey contrast and not this creamy colour, because that centre colour here, can you see, there is a bit of a difference here, but it's very similar to my contrast colour. And I did go into it knowing that, and I just thought, I'm sure there'll be enough of a contrast. But I just think if I'd used grey instead of this creamy colour, you'd be able to see that more. But I just felt that this colour that I've used, I just thought it went better with all of the other colours. But I think I will be doing another one of these. This was sort of like a prototype, if you like. And I think there's one thing that I would change. So I do want to have a go at another one. And yeah, so I'm just sort of building up the yarns to do that. But this is where I'm up to. So I'm now, you can see, here's the corner. So this is corner to corner. So I started down here with this dark red, and then I've moved through all of these sort of orangey, rusty sort of colours. And then you get to the centre one, which, I'll be honest with this, so I'll tell you what the yarn is in a minute, but I think this colour, this centre one, this is meant to be a fade, I think. I'm sure it's got to be a fade. But this centre one, really, it jumps out to me. I think I understand that it's following a theme, but I just feel like if it was me, I would have done something to make that a little less jumpy, a little less jarring, because a lot of, you know, it's very fadey and beautiful, isn't it, through this section here, but then it just seems to jump to this cream, and then again it's nice and sort of fadey. Well, I say that, but you've got two greens and then you go into a blue, which doesn't naturally sort of fade because you've got a darker green here. But anyway, I mean, it's lovely. I just wish I'd used a grey there. So what I've done with this is my own sort of design, if you like, and I'm using, the way I've constructed this corner to corner, I'm using the method that you use when you make hap shawls, you know, the big square hap shawls. But I have changed the decrease section because I didn't like that you couldn't see the little loopy sections as much, you know, the loopy edging. If I hold it up, you should be able to see that on the edge here, the way the increases are done, you create these little loops along the edge. And when it got to the decrease half, I didn't like that you couldn't see the loops as much, so I've changed it, the way that I do the decreases, and I think it works really nicely. It's got a nice corner to it. And yeah, I'm working now down the decreases. So I've just finished the contrast section after this blue, and I've got 3 more colours to go. So what I'm doing is I'm holding 2 minis double. So the next 2 minis that I will hold, these are 20 gram minis, the next 2 will be these 2 lovely blues. And then after that, I've kept them in the bag. I've just got 4 left. You can see they're getting darker. So it'll be these 2, and then finally these dark 2, which there is a difference with those last 2, but it's very, very subtle. If I could change anything about this advent, I would make it so that, I don't know, that because some of the changes are really, really subtle, and actually in some lights, for example, the 2 that I started with down here, I couldn't really tell much of a difference at all, and these 2. But then others, like in that centre section, there is a bit of a jump. So I think I would have preferred it to be more of a full fade rather than, it's sort of like it's 2 halves, and maybe that's how it's designed, I don't know. You know, it may be me misinterpreting it, and maybe it's not a fade. I don't, look, it is what it is, and I think it's really pretty. So yeah, I'm working down this side with just 3 colours left to go. What I've been doing is periodically I've been adding in a drop stitch row. Can you see those? And I think it just adds a little something extra to it rather than it just being plain garter stitch. It gives me little targets to aim for. It makes it sort of interesting because what I'm doing now is I'm basically mirroring, I always struggle to say that word, I'm mirroring what I did on the first half. So reach the centre point. The centre lies in the middle of a contrast section. And then if you imagine like you were opening a book, you would then mirror the number of rows for each section going the other way. So I have made full notes on it, but you can do it by looking at it. So you can just look back and see how many rows this one is, for example, and you know that's what you've got to do over here. And I haven't run out of yarn or anything like that, because you never know with these things, you know. Sometimes one half might use a little bit more than the other half, depending on how the increases and decreases work. But so far it's worked out fine. I've just had like a tiny bit of yarn left for each colour. So I've not run out or anything like that. So yeah, I've just been happily working through this, and I want to get this finished for the next show because we've got a trip coming up at the end of May, a very exciting trip, and I kind of want to have relatively clear needles for that. It's a lovely size actually. The width of it, again, I didn't know how big this would come out, but the width is like this. It's a nice width, that, isn't it? And my plans for another one I'm collecting the Pixie Yarns yarn club this year. It's called Roots because it's connected to Sophie going back to her sort of family history roots, which I believe is based in Cornwall. So I think she went on a trip to plan, this whole club. This was the first one. I think it's like April, June, and then something like September, November, I think. I'm not certain. It's on her website anyway. So the next one will be due in June, which is just next month. This was the one I got for April. And you can see how lovely it would work with what I'm doing. These two together, these two, and then these two. But I want to wait for the next one before I start it because I want to make sure I get the contrast colour right this time. So I'm waiting to see what the next one of those looks like. But also, I think the one thing I'm going to change, because the contrast yarn I'm using is a Cascade Heritage and the colourway is Macadamia. It's just this lovely creamy colour. And I'm currently working on the second skein and I've only got this left of the second skein. So I've split it into two halves and I'm working with it double. So I think I will need to just get into this one. So I'll see how much of this third skein I need. But I think, because that's a bit annoying, having to just go into a third skein. I think to keep it within two skeins for the contrast is much better, because you could just wind two skeins, have 200 gram balls and know that that's going to be enough for your contrast. So I'm going to modify it slightly and just do 4 rounds here. I've done 5 rounds of rows of the contrast. And I think if I change that to 4, it won't make that much difference in terms of size, I don't think. But I think it'll give enough extra yarn that I won't need to go into the third skein. But this advent, did I even say? It was from Beehive Yarns, from lovely Beth at Beehive Yarns. And it was the Bookish Advent for last year. I actually bought this. I didn't buy it as an Advent. I bought it earlier this year when she put some extra ones into her shop. And I bought it then. And it's all based on these editions of books. So it is following this colour theme, isn't it? So I see exactly what has happened with the colours and why they are what they are. And they've all got titles. The books have all got titles. So the next ones will be Far from the Madding Crowd and Pride and Prejudice are those two. So that's lovely, isn't it? So yeah, hopefully next time this will be a finished item, fingers crossed. So Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
An epic hat.
Oh gosh.
Now look, it was a close run thing, this. This was nearly my pick of the projects.
Oh, stop it. It was not.
It certainly wasn't.
No.
You may recall that some months ago, Kay sourced this lovely yarn. I was going to knit the Albion with it. I cast on and I knitted the rib and it looked absolutely awful. The ribbing was just terrible. So stopped knitting that, got some other yarn, and this went into stash. So then I started knitting some hats. I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to get it out and have a go with it. Largely out of interest, because it had knitted up so strangely before. I just thought, do you know what? I want to knit like a full project with this and see how it turns out. The answer is not well.
The yarn is Primrose Yarn Co. And it's one that was in association with Brooklyn Tweed. So I think this is the exact base that Brooklyn Tweed use. It's worsted weight, American Targhee Columbia wool, 280 yards for 100 grams. It's a 2-ply. And this colourway is called Dark Room.
I think it's going to fit.
This hat's just come out absolutely enormous.
It's ginormous. Yes, so
I think
cast on the right number for the weight, you would think. Knitted other hats in a similar weight to this fairly recently. Yeah. But it's completely huge.
It's
so
enormous.
huge. We even considered turning it into a cowl.
A cowl, I think.
But it wasn't quite wide enough, I don't think.
No, I don't think it's quite wide enough for a cowl.
I'm doing the decreases now anyway. So.
Oh, right. Well, you can't give this to anybody.
I don't want to.
I mean, even on your head, it's going to be massive.
Yeah, it'd be hilarious when I put it on, though.
It's absolutely enormous.
It's stupendous. Neil, yeah.
There's just something about this yarn, and
I reckon I could have done 20 stitches less.
Weird gauge.
Definitely
and
10 less.
I don't know. Oh, absolutely you could.
Do you think 20 or 10? What's your guess?
20.
Yeah. So that's nuts, because I've just knitted one of these.
The exact same hat.
In the same weight.
Yeah.
The same weight.
I know.
And, I mean,
it's so weird. It says it's a worsted weight, and you're using 4.5 millimetre, which is a perfectly acceptable
Neil,
needle
look,
size, isn't it?
I will say some
It's
positives.
weird.
The positives are, it's a lovely colour. Another positive is, knitted plain, it looks all right.
It's very, very textury, but it's nice.
But as soon as you start doing any knits and pearls,
The rib
it's
is
an
awful.
absolute nightmare.
The rib is awful.
Now, let me tell you,
I can't even look
as
at
Kay will recall, I started doing what I was supposed to do to get this rib right, and do you recall what happened?
The yarn broke.
The yarn broke not once, but 3 times.
Yeah, it pulls apart so easy.
So
let me just show
to knit
you.
a rib as you would need to knit a rib, and this was the problem on the other thing, the yarn can't take it.
So the yarn looks like this, but it literally comes apart with hardly any.
Now, the crazy thing is, I'm used to knitting with Let Lopi.
Yeah,
so
which also does.
But I can knit a perfectly good-looking rib with Let Lopi. So it's like, what? It's crazy.
And this is a 2-ply as well, so you would think being a 2-ply, it would have a little bit more strength than that.
There's no strength in this.
No,
Now,
it just...
Another positive I would say to it is, if I did have the inclination, and I would be able to, and maybe I will, who knows? Maybe I will. Maybe I will knit another one of these and do 80 stitches. I'm going to.
Right.
I'm going to see. I am going to see if I can make this yarn work.
Well, let me have a look at the stitch
obsessed.
count for you. I'll have a look at the hat and measure it, and and I'll work out where it should be.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So another positive of it is it's so light that I have a feeling that if you could get it right, and it would take some effort to get it right. I think whatever you were doing, it would take a little bit of effort, unless you were knitting a pattern which was specifically designed for this yarn. Then, if you get it right, it's going to feel, I would guess, quite nice on.
It's very light, very, very light. Yeah, and it's not scratchy in the least.
No.
But it's got an odd feel to it.
Yeah.
It's almost unpleasant.
Yeah, definitely.
Not in a scratchy way at all. There's no scratch whatsoever. But it just feels a bit strange.
Like old string from the back of your grandpa's drawer.
No, because that is rough, isn't it? And it's not rough. It's just a really individual yarn. And I know lots of people out there will say they love it.
I don't.
And I'm sure maybe a few people out there will say, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think it's an acquired taste, maybe. And maybe it's one of these things where it's just sort of fashionable because it's Brooklyn tweed. And I know Brooklyn tweed is very popular. And I'm not being overly critical. All I'm saying is I know
the point you're making
that a lot
is
of people like
fashion
it.
houses quite regularly bring out incorrect things.
Well,
I love wearing Levi's jeans, but they also produce quite a lot of products I wouldn't be seen dead in.
Yeah, that is true. And
so
I
that's
think,
what you mean by fashion.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, I don't know if you're more inclined to say that it's really good because it's a particular brand.
Less about
we're
rubbish.
just honest. We're just honest.
What else is on your needles?
Okay, so my next project is a very lovely pair of socks. Yeah, I have shown these before, but when I showed them as like a double thing. I've got 2 pairs of this same pattern on the go, and this is just one of the pairs. I am working on the other pair as well, and I'll maybe show you those next time. These are a pair of my Oakworth socks. So the Oakworth socks were a design that I came up with for our Knitty You series, which we ran in 2020. And I've knit them quite a few times since then. I really love the pattern. So let me tell you, first of all, the Oakworth socks, and they're called the Oakworth socks because they were inspired by the film The Railway Children. And in The Railway Children, the station is called Oakworth, which is a real station and does have steam trains running on it. You can go on, it's like one of the heritage lines. So you can go on a steam train that goes through that station. And the pattern on it It was really just a step up from a vanilla sock because I designed these socks for the series where I was showing how to knit socks on double points. And rather than it just being a plain sock, I wanted to put a bit of interest into it. So that's how I came up with this. So here's the first finished sock. And down either side of the leg, it's just got this little garter band. And when you wear these, that looks like a train track down the top of your foot. So that's where I got my inspiration from. So I've knit this exactly to the pattern, apart from in the pattern I used my cottage toe, which is a rounded wedge toe. And this time I've used my umbrella toe because I just thought it went better with the pattern now. I used the cottage toe before because I think I'd done another pattern in that same series where it had the umbrella toe, so I wanted to put in a different toe into this pattern. But actually, I think aesthetically, I think the umbrella toe just looks better overall. So these yarns I dyed myself and I just had in my stash. The blue actually has got a lot of pink in it, although you can't see it as you look at it. But as I've been knitting it, I can see little hues of pink in there. It's really interesting because I wanted to produce a blue which was very pink leaning. And I think if you put this next to a blue which was a cooler blue, you would see the difference. But I really love how it's worked up. So I just wanted to do a little contrast top to the rib here. And then I decided not to do a contrast heel, just to put in a contrast toe. And I really like how it looks. So this pattern has a garter edged slip stitch heel flap, which is lovely, and a square heel turn. So there's a couple of different things in this pattern, which is nice. And I've got the second one on the go. I just cast this on yesterday, I think, and I've just started on the pattern. So that's on the go as well. And again, I want to get these finished in the next couple of weeks, and then I'm just going to decide if I am going to release it or not. I haven't fully decided yet, but I just wanted another pair of them anyway. So we'll see anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. And the other pair that I'm knitting is using Dandelion and Dogwood, which historically is the yarn I've always used to knit these socks. I think it's like a sentimental thing because I originally designed it using that yarn. And the yarn I used was really lovely. It was called October Unicorn. It was more of a pretty variegated, can you see here? But the one I'm using now for the other pair is working out with a kind of swirly stripe, and I didn't want that for the pattern photos if I was going to release it as a pattern because it's too distracting from the pattern. Didn't seem to be right, but I want the pair of socks, so I am knitting those and I'm on the foot of the first one at the moment. So like I said, I'll show you those next time. But yeah, I really like how this blue is working up. And of course the blue and the grey makes me think of a summer sky with steam from the train, which is lovely. So I'll keep you posted on those.
What needles are you using to do this?
I'm using the Addy lace needles. I think did I mention these last time that these were my favourite sock needles?
You've actually just published a review on those needles, and here's a little snippet.
Hi everybody, I'm here today to do a little review of some needles that I've used for years and years. They're a favourite needle of mine for knitting socks, and we realised I've never actually done a review of them. So here I am to talk about the Addy lace needles. Really, I can't remember the last time I made a pair of socks using Magic Loop that wasn't using Addy lace. It's a long time. I've used these for years. A fairly sort of standard cable, I would say, but I've never really had any problems with it. It always functions perfectly well, and the join is lovely. It's nice and smooth. From far as I can remember, I don't really recall ever getting any snagging there, so it's a nice smooth join. And then the tips are just lovely. You know, this is what I really like about these needles, is the really lovely long taper and then these gorgeous pointed tips. I could just show you actually the cable in action. So it sits really nicely, it doesn't bother me. You know, you can see they're very well behaved. They don't... Yeah, so lovely needles for a super lovely project, and I'm going to try and whiz through this second sock quickly so that I can start thinking about my going away projects, as I said before.
And the next pair of socks I knit, which I think will be... Oh, I can't say.
You can't say?
Not till later on in the show, Kay.
Oh, right,
but
okay.
I think perhaps I would quite like a contrast yarn so I can do what you've done. Or maybe I'll do the pair after that. I want to do what you've done. I want to do 2 or 3...
What, do you mean the little bit at the top?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. That's fine.
And I'll do 2 different too.
Oh, yeah. I've never done that before, where I just do a little tiny contrast up here and then the toe. I really like how it looks. And also it means you've got less ends to weave in, which I think is always a plus, isn't it?
Right, look, speaking of socks, yes, it's time for more My Perfect socks. Yes. And we mentioned it earlier, the colourway is outstanding. It's a whole new way of using the dyes too, which is also super... It's just cool. Wait till you see this. And before I give it away, I think we should hand over to the show so Kay can reveal the rather wonderful, I mean, just amazing inspiration for today's yarn. So yes, now it's time for more My Perfect Socks.
It's a brand new year, so it's time for a new challenge. I want to knit myself the perfect pair of socks. To do that, I'm going to need yarn and lots of it. The inspiration will be one of my favourite films. So together, let's create My Perfect Socks. Welcome back, everybody, to My Perfect Socks. Yes, we are over halfway through now with our socks, which is just amazing, isn't it? It's really funny because at the beginning of this series, I did plan out the whole sequence of the colours, right? And I laid them all out and I was like, yeah, this is how I'm going to dye them. This is the order that I'm going to dye them in. And of course, that completely changed after I saw the first 2 colourways next to each other. I then thought, well, no, this one's going to look better next, or I want to do this one next, or for whatever reason. So I've actually been deciding as we go along what the next colour is going to be, and that actually makes it more fun for me. What I do is I'll get the sock and I'll lay that out and I'll get all of my full 24 minis that I dyed last year, and I'll take out the ones that I've already done, and then I'll see what that leaves me with, and then I'll just try them all next to the colour that I've just knitted in and just decide really which one's going to look best. So that's what I did for this one, and I've been waiting to do this colourway. I always knew I was going to do this particular colourway because, as you all know, if you've been watching along, our theme for the sort of dyeing exploration that we've been doing is the film You've Got Mail. So what I did was I dyed an advent calendar last year, 24 mini advent calendar for me and a friend. And what I've done with this series is I will have chosen by the end of it my favourite 12, and we've put those into a scrappy sock and knit through My Perfect Socks. So yeah, the colourway that I've chosen today, I won't actually go into it too much because we're going to sit down, aren't we, and have a chat about it. But I do need to tell you what the colourway is. And it's called Brinkley is My Dog. So yeah, if you are a dog fan or a Brinkley fan from the film, then this is the one for you. So yeah, our colourway today is inspired by the absolutely fabulous Brinkley, who is the dog in You've Got Mail. The technique today is quite a lot different, and also I've used the colours in a different way. So yeah, that's all about what we're going to be doing today. So of course now what we need to do is get cozied up in my little corner and we'll have a chat about today's inspiration. Okay, so I am now cozied up in my chair and it's time to talk about today's specific sort of colour inspiration. So yeah, it's Brinkley the dog that we're going to be dyeing up today. So I actually, when I checked my dye book, which is right here, when I dyed my advent calendar last year, this was the second colourway that I dyed up, because when I dyed up my advent calendar, actually I sort of did it in sequence to the film. And Brinkley does appear really early on in the film, within the first few minutes, I think he appears. So yeah, so Tom Hanks' character, he is emailing Meg Ryan's character. You know, they're writing letters to each other. You know the premise of the film. And in this particular letter that he's writing to her, he's talking about Brinkley. And he starts it off by saying, Brinkley is my dog. That's the sort of first sentence, and then goes on to describe him. So he says things like he likes to spend his days sleeping on a large green pillow the size of an inner tube, I think he says. But he's a really lovely dog and he appears a lot in it. He's really friendly. So he's in virtually the first scene and he's also in the very last scene. And he appears then sporadically through the film. So when I was thinking about this colourway, when I initially dyed it, what I wanted to do was a really very tonal yarn. It's almost variegated, but not really, because we don't use a lot of colours when we're creating it. But it's very, very tonal yarn, because all animals, I would say, probably have a lot of different tones within their colours, but especially dogs that have long hair, I feel, because I think as the sort of hair grows, there are sections of him that are really quite dark gold and then others that are lighter. So that's what I was trying to achieve. And I wanted to get in there the green pillow that he sleeps on, and also he does wear a collar and it's bright red, and you do see little glimpses of the collar. But when it came to dyeing the yarn, you know, I could have gone for all three, gold, red and green. It's also very festive, isn't it? And I could have created some kind of variegated colour, but I think it would have taken the focus off the main inspiration, which was Brinkley. So what I decided to do, and you'll see when we come to dye it, is I've predominantly used the gold ochre in a really concentrated way, but then the olive green I've used in a way that, although you don't really see it as green in the yarn, what it does is it deepens the colours, the areas that we add it to, and it gives a lot of depth to the colour and a lot of interest. And then the red, I'm actually not using in the main skein this time. We're keeping the red for the mini. So it makes the most beautiful, like, either sock set, or, you know, you could do all sorts with it. You can make a lovely stripy cowl, you could make mitts, you could do all sorts with it. Because that red isn't in the main skein, I think it just looks beautiful, the two together. It's really contrasty, but also they do complement each other really well. So that's all about today's colourway inspiration. So now, of course, it's time to have a look at everything that we're going to need to dye our beautiful yarn. First of all, I've got my saucepans that we dye in. These are stainless steel. I like the ones that have 2 handles because they're nice and easy to move around when they've got heavy water in. I'm going to use two pans this time because we're dyeing 2 different colourways each time. All of your equipment that you use for dyeing, you must only ever use it for dyeing because the dye powders are toxic. We then need our citric acid. So citric acid is our mordant. The mordant is the sort of chemical, if you like, that makes the dye permanently stick to the yarn. So in my case, I'm going to use citric acid, which I would say is the most common way these days that dyers, get their mordant. Some dyers use vinegar. People like Malabrigo, Madeline Tosh, their yarns always smell vinegary when you get them. That's because they use vinegar instead of citric acid. But citric acid is easy to get. It's a food safe product. It's basically the stuff that goes into fizzy sweets if you ever eat fizzy sweets. So we've then got some gloves. I've got some thicker rubber gloves which are more heat proof, and then I've just got these thin sort of surgical gloves. I've got a mask, of course. You must always use a mask when you are dyeing your yarns. I've got my big mixing spoon. Where would I be without my big mixing spoon? And a jug. This is just one of these cheap plastic jugs that you can get anywhere, and I use this for when I make a liquid solution with my dyes. I've got some old tea towels, and then underneath here I've got a piece of oilcloth, just a spare bit that I had from making those sort of wipe clean tablecloths, and this will keep your work surfaces lovely and clean and dye free. And then finally, in my little pot here, I've got some brushes and then my measuring spoon. So this is a 1/8 of a teaspoon measuring spoon. I think they're classed as like scientific measuring spoons, these ones, but this is stainless steel. I don't think I've ever had any other teaspoon. And you just wash all these things thoroughly afterwards, ready for the next time. And then finally, we're going to be looking at our yarns. So each time we dye in this series, I'm going to be dyeing the same yarns. So in my bowl here, I've already got soaking in just some water, warm water from the tap, and a scoop of my citric acid, which is about a tablespoon. All I've ever done is bunged in like a scoop. These things usually come with a scoop, and I'm guessing it's about a tablespoon. Does it say on the back? No, it doesn't. But I just put in a scoop when I'm soaking my yarns, and then you'll see each time I dye a batch of yarn, I put in another scoop. So in my bowl soaking, we've got fingering weight yarn, because this is for a lovely perfect pair of socks. So we've got a fingering weight yarn. Here I've got 100 grams, just one single 100 gram skein. And then here I've got 2 20-gram mini skeins. So this is an 85-15 base, and it's a 4-plied yarn. So it's nice and round and plump, it's soft and bouncy. This is the base that I've been dyeing on for quite some time now. You can get lots of other fingering weight bases. The standard one is that sort of 75-25, and that's very nice. I use that a lot to knit socks, but when I'm dyeing it myself, I just prefer this base. It's a bit more kind of luxurious. It's just squishy and lovely. So 85-15 base, there's 400 meters per 100 grams, and then we've got the 2 20-gram minis. So that's going to be what we're going to be dyeing on each time. Right, so we now need to look at the specific dyes that we're going to be using today. So there's only actually 3 dye colours that we're going to be using today, so quite minimal really, and they are all jacquard. So you're going to laugh when I tell you what the first dye colour is, because going on the theme, you can probably work out that the first dye colour I'm going to use is, of course, gold ochre, but I'm using it in a really different way. So yeah, it's jacquard, gold ochre, number 636. We've then got, I don't think I've ever used this colour before that I can recall, certainly in recent times. So as I've said, they're all jacquard. This one is olive 634. So that's the second one. And then the final colour is fire red, which is 618. I forgot to describe the actual colours, didn't I? So gold ochre is gold. That's all I need to say about that one. Olive, so this is like an olive green, if you imagine that colour. It's funny, this dye, because depending on how you use it, I find that it can look a lot different. If you use it quite sparingly and just dye up a skein, it's got a lot of brown in it. And it can sometimes lean a bit brown depending on how you use it. But today we're using it in a very specific way, and you do see that olive colour. So it's olive green, that sort of true olive green colour. And then fire red is like a fire engine. Yeah, like a clear red. So that's fire red. So that's all 3 dyes that we're going to use today. Okay, so I've got my pot of water heating up here. Now this time I've got it quite full. It's about 2/3 full of water, I would say. And I've got in a good scoop, tablespoon or so of citric acid into there. So I'm going to get my yarn into the pot first of all. So it's had a good soak again in some citric acid. And it is really important actually with this particular colourway that you do have a good soak in the citric acid. We really want to get lots of that mordant fully into the yarn. So let's get that out. Give it a nice little shake just to release all those fibres. It's just 1 skein of fingering weight as we've been doing. So I'm going to get that into the pot, and as you drop it in, just give it a lovely move around. You can see already this is quite different to what we've done before because we've got quite a lot of water in there for the amount of yarn we've got, you know, just 1 skein. Okay, now it's quite hot, so that's fine, we can get going. So what I'm going to do, the first colour that's going in is the gold ochre. It is predominantly gold ochre, this colourway, but it does look quite different because of the way I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it in quite a heavy-handed way. So this is a good one if you are not someone that's very good at doing like delicate speckles. This one is definitely a good one. So I'm going to take my gold ochre and I'm going to get 1/8, so a full teaspoon. And I'm just going to haphazardly sprinkle it over the surface. And then I'm going to get another one. You're all a bit shocked, aren't you? Because I don't normally use this much dye. Same thing. All around. So now, push it down. And what we want to do is just get rid of all of that dye that's sort of floating on the surface. As we're pushing it in, because we've used this in a really concentrated way, what you can probably see is that some areas are really intense with colours and then others not so much, which is what we want. So just keep pushing until you can't see any floaty bits of dye anymore. You can use your big spoon if you want. I mean, I just tend to use the little spoon because it sort of washes it as well at the same time. So that's all of that dye in, so there's no more on the surface now. So now straight away we can move the yarn. So I'm going to lift it up, and you can see there's loads of dye in the pot, totally fine. But what we've got going on is areas that are darker than others where more dye has hit it. That's just what we want. So now I'm going to move it, and I'm just going to move it from one end to the other. So down like that, round, and then also I like to flip it over. And then back in the pot, and now I am going to use my big spoon and move it around because we want it to kind of more or less absorb that dye that we've put in. Don't worry if there's a little bit left, but just this movement around like this will just pretty much absorb, you know, all of that more or less immediately. You'll see that your water will go much paler coloured. So keep swishing until your water sort of, you know, if it's a pale gold, that's totally fine. So if we have a look now, there's a little bit of dye in there, but that's not a problem. So now I'm just going to lift it back up, pop it back down, just so that I can rearrange it a bit, like this. Right, so we're now going to go back in and put more gold ochre on. It's quite shocking the amount that we use. So we're going to do the same thing again. So I've got a full eighth back over the surface, just all over, and then another one. Same thing. Okay, and then just push again onto the yarn until you can't see any more of that dye powder. We are using a lot of dye. For one skein of yarn, this is an awful lot of dye. And what I would say to you is really make sure that, first of all, you've got plenty of citric acid in there, and then also that we're going to really bring it up to a good temperature. You know, I always like to not boil it, you know that, but I am going to make sure that it really is at that 100-degree point. But even then, when we come to wash the yarn, we might find that some gold dye does rinse out. If that's the case, all you do is we're just going to keep rinsing until no more dye comes out. So I'm going to give that a minute or two. I'm going to lift it out and have a look at it, and if I think it needs a bit more yarn, if I think it needs a bit more dye, then I'm going to do that. So yeah, we are using a lot of that gold ochre today, and this is what produces that really deep, intense golden retriever colour. Right, so let's have a little look at this. Lovely. So this is what we want. We want to be getting these really deep areas. Can you see that? It's just so lovely. And then we've still got some lighter areas as well. Still got quite a lot of gold in the pot. Don't worry about that. So I'm just going to move it, maybe, you know, not quite halfway this time. Leave it turned that way because it looks a bit lighter. I think I am going to add a bit more. I know at this point you'll think I'm being absolutely crazy, but wait until you see it and then you won't think I'm bonkers. So I've moved it around again, and I'm just going to add, I think, one more teaspoon. Just same thing, just really haphazard, you know. Okay, and then just push it down onto the yarn so that we get lots of contrast. You know, there's tons of tones going on here, different depths of colours, some nice light areas and some really intensely, almost kind of like, it's not copper, I mean nutmeg, like a sort of nutmeggy colour going on. So make sure that all of your bits of dye powder have gone in, and I think we should be good now. So now what I'm going to do, there is another stage to this colour, but I'm really going to crank up the heat because I want to make sure that I really get a good absorption of dye, because we've used such a lot of dye. We're just going to take a bit more care this time just to make sure that we really get that fixed to the yarn. So bring up your temperature and get it to that point where it just starts to boil, and then we can turn it back down again and do the next part. So that's just going to take 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most, and then we'll come back and we will add in the next colour. Okay, so that now is really, really hot. It's steamy. It just started to bubble a little bit on the surface, so I've just turned it down and it's just ticking over now on a really hot heat. So now it's time to add in some olive green. So, well, it's just called olive, isn't it? But that's what it is. And what we're going to do actually for this is we're going to make a liquid. So I've got my little pot here. And I'm going to put in here about half a teaspoon. And when you look at this dye powder in the pot, it does look brown, but it's going to give us a lovely green colour. So about half in there. And now I'm going to make that up to round about 200, 250 mils, something like that, of just warm water from the tap. Make sure it's warm because the dye powder will dissolve in much better. Okay, so it looks very unappealing at this point. Give it a stir. And I'll show you the colour in the spoon and then you'll be able to see the sort of shade. So it is definitely a green, but there is a lot of brown in there. The foam that appears does have a very sort of beigey browny hue to it. It's definitely not green. Can you see that? It almost looks slightly in the orangey tones. So make sure that it's all really nicely dissolved. So if you look in my spoon now, can you see that that's a very distinct greenish colour? If I drop it back down. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 layers of this and we're going to pour it across the surface and then use our big spoon just to stop it being too sharp of a line when we pour it on. Okay, so we're just gonna, about half, I've got about 220 mils there, something around that is fine. And when you pour it on, don't panic, because it will look quite dark. So just in ribbons like this, look. No sort of rhyme or reason to it, you can go in any sort of direction. I've used a bit more than half there, but that's fine. And then just give it a push, just so that it moves around the dye a little bit. And although that is a distinct green that we've put in there, like I said, you don't specifically see green in there. You will get slight hints of it, but what it does is it just deepens and gives us lots more tone. Right, so that's just had a minute or two, so I'm going to give it a little move around now. I've definitely got my gloves on because this water is now really hot. So as I lift it up, I'll show you. Can you see the areas where the green has hit here and here? It just gives a darker colour. It doesn't read specifically green as such. It's got a greenish hue. So I'm just going to give this a move now. So I'll move it to the bottom like that, but I'm also going to flip it over just to make sure that I get lots of green sort of, you know, through the yarn. And we've still got a bit of orangey colour in the pot there. Don't worry about that. So I'm just going to pour the rest over as I did before, just very matter of fact and haphazard. And then I sometimes just give my pot a little rinse as well to make sure I've got it all out. Get your big spoon and just give that a little move around. Okay, so that's the colourway complete. So once again, I'm going to crank up the heat because adding that water in, even though it was warm, it will have lowered the temperature. So we now need to bring that up to the point of simmering and just let it sort of just simmer for 5 minutes or so. I am more careful with this, that I really do make sure it's nice and hot for a good few minutes. And then once it's had that 5 minutes or so simmering away, I'm just going to pop it outside to cool down and we can get on with the minis. So there we go, that's our first and main colourway all dyed up and it's cooling down outside. So come back in part 2 when we're going to dye up the coordinating minis and then we're going to get to the knitting. So I'll see you back soon.
Now, that was spectacular. I've never seen dyes used quite in that way before.
I know, it's a lot of dye. And as I said, I think you will have seen in this part of it, but I do say that when you come to rinse the yarn, you might find there's dye in the water. Just keep rinsing until it's clear, just to get rid of the excess.
What an amazing process. With that olive going in and...
Yeah. And I'll show you the yarn again and when you've watched the second half, but it is interesting adding in that colour. You would think that you would actually see it within the yarn, but you don't see it individually, if you know what I mean, in the yarn. You don't see it as highlights through the yarn. It just seems to merge in and change the colour of the gold in certain areas and just make it a bit deeper and richer.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait to see it finished. I've just got a feeling I'm going to want to use this yarn, Kate.
Yes, well, it's got your name written all over it, hasn't it?
Inspired to knit socks. Perhaps they were the ones I was referring to before we went to the segment.
Okay.
But look, there's so much more to come because when we come back, Kate's going to be taking that red and the collar and doing up the contrasting colourway.
Which is a fantastic red.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely stupendous. Oh, yes, it might just look like someone when you finished. But we'll wait and see. Now, it's time for the pick of the project.
Oh, yeah,
and
baby.
Yes, it's me. Oh,
Dan's turn first.
Is my absolute pick of the projects. It's bordering on my favourite one of these gorgeous Let Lopey yoked jumpers that I've ever knitted. It's the Godey, and the colours are amazing, and everything about it is amazing. And what is so cool is I've never knitted so many rounds of multi-stranded colourwork.
You've got 3 balls on the go, haven't you? At the moment?
One of those isn't on the go.
Which one? The red one.
I accidentally.
So he's got 3 colours going on at the moment.
3 coins in a fountain, Kate.
I don't think I've ever done this.
Multi-stranded colourwork.
When you're working with 3 colours at the same time, I don't think I have ever done this.
Well,
which is interesting.
I've had a little bit of experience with it before.
It must be a bit laborious.
I've had a little bit of experience with it before because on that tank top, which I've been dipping into again, and it might just be a work in progress again quite soon.
Okay,
the Roosty tank top.
You hibernated it,
that
didn't you,
had
a while ago?
4 stranded colourwork on it.
Did it really?
Yes.
Oh, look at this.
Some of these I've done before. I've had a few rounds of multi-stranded, but not like multiples, which is what is on this. And it's worth it because the effect is absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, it's really lovely, isn't it? I mean,
it gets so exciting the further up the yoke that you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just completely wonderful.
I think this colour would look good on me.
The debut for this jumper, I'm well ahead of schedule because the debut for this jumper will be episode 2 of this year's Winter Walk series.
Don't worry, I can put them back on.
She does this all the time.
It's not a problem.
We debuted Winter Walks last year with the single episode in our Christmas special. This year, back in November, 2 walks. Oh, yes. And in every Winter Walk, I will always be wearing a different Let Lopey jumper.
Wow.
Oh, yes. It's very exciting. So, loving this, loving everything about this project.
Look, it's nearly done.
And, you know, there was some frustrations at the start because the sleeve didn't quite match up. You know, on the pattern. But do you know what? You stick it on the under, and it's fine. You know, the only time anyone will see it is if you're swinging your arms when you walk, and you have to be very, very. I mean, it's hard even to spot. You know, it's easy to pick at things. You can only really give a full review of something when you've finished it, really. And you know, I've not finished this yet, but I'm close. And the overall experience has been great. Now, the interesting thing is the designer can't pronounce the name. Amazing name, Icelandic. Yeah.
It's like Dottir.
I think it's something like Vidis Jonsdottir.
That's it. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Cool names in Iceland, isn't it?
Well,
everyone's got the best names.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I love their names.
But there's another name on it too.
Oh, right.
So I think it was designed by someone else maybe years ago.
Oh, right.
And I don't fully know. But there's 2 names. It's the first time I've ever knitted one that's got 2 names on it. Right. So I think it's an old pattern that she's, taken and
revived. Or whatever.
And I'm so glad that she's revived it.
And she does a lot of writing for the Lopi magazines, doesn't she? The Lopi, not magazines, pattern books.
Yeah, I have multiple copies.
Yeah, you've got lots of those.
I will be knitting another one from that.
Yeah, I mean, they are good, those books. But I think I find that there'll be like maybe 2 jumpers that you really like, and then a lot of kind of random stuff that you would never make.
There is, but I've certainly not exhausted.
I think they're still worth the money.
And I will be knitting something else from one of those books next.
Yeah.
Definitely, because they're just so much fun. And the other thing I've realised is I definitely don't have enough of them. I thought I had no, not the books, the jumpers.
Oh, I thought you meant the books.
I thought I had more jumpers than I did.
How many do you have?
I'm disappointed. I think it's 4 or 5.
It's not 5, I don't think.
No.
So you've got 3 others than this.
Okay, so I've got the Radari.
Right.
I've got the Alexander.
Yeah.
I've got the Anniversary.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think you've got 3. I think this is your 4th one.
Oh, crumbs. Well, I need 7.
Oh, well, okay then.
Yes.
So we need to start choosing more yarn and a pattern, because you've not got
3. That'll be 3 more.
But you've got the navy blue Gansey sort of one on the go.
Yeah, that doesn't
as
count.
Well, that doesn't count.
No, you don't.
So you need 7 of these.
Yeah, because these are my winter outdoor jumpers.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the Gansey I hope will be my winter indoor jumper.
Well.
We shall see. So yes, my pick of the projects.
Planning colours. I love planning colours. So
my pick of the projects is the Godey. It's stupendous, racing up the decreases. My goodness,
really,
this is going to be finished.
I can't wait to see you in this one. You'll have to do a little photo shoot when it's finished.
Yeah, absolutely. But
we'll go out and take some.
It will appear on the show in Winter Walks episode 2.
Lovely.
This November.
Very nice.
What's your pick of the projects?
So
this is the moment.
My pick of the projects this time is some socks. And I said on the last show, actually, I was thinking of starting this pair of socks for Dan, which is unusual in itself. You know, a pick of the projects being a pair of socks for Dan is, for me, unusual, because his socks are not normally my favourite things to knit, just because they're so big. However, this pair of socks I'm knitting in DK weight. Now, it's been a bit of a process, actually, these socks, and what it's not made me do, but what it's inspired me to do is to spend quite a lot of time looking at DK weight socks, and in particular looking for yarns that would be suitable for DK weight socks. And I've started compiling a little list of like commercial yarns, and it's sort of yarns that you wouldn't necessarily think would be suitable for socks. When I say that, I mean they're not marketed as being suitable for socks, but actually they are, you know, because all you've got to do really is look at the content, you know, what's the yarn made up of, and the sort of list that I'm making, what I'm looking for is a good amount of wool, but also a good amount of a strengthener. So something like nylon, or, you know, it comes in various forms, doesn't it? There's polyamide, nylon, microfiber, all of these sorts of things. It's all kind of the same thing, and it's what will add strength into the yarn. So that's been a really good process, and that's still ongoing. And actually, let me tell you this first of all before I show you Dan's socks. But one of the yarns that I went looking for, because I thought, I'm going to get some of that and make Dan some socks in it, because it's a really good yarn for DK weight socks. And guess what? It's been discontinued. I found it. It's not on Wool Warehouse anymore, but I did find it, and I've ordered some skeins from, how do you pronounce this? Is it Abercarn? And it's like a sort of fabric, a big fabric and yarn and all sorts of other things shop. So I found it there, and I've ordered quite a few balls of it actually, because I just wanted it in my stash to make future DK weight socks, because it is such a good yarn. The yarn I'm talking about it's by, now I'm going to mispronounce it, but is it Skepias? It's the one that everybody calls sheepies. So you'll know the brand. And the yarn is called Merino Soft. And it's something like 50% merino, 25% microfiber, 25% polyamide, something like that. And it comes in 50 gram balls, And I used it, I'm holding this pair of socks because I used the yarn for this design, which I designed these quite a few years ago. These are my only, at the moment, my only DK weight, specific DK weight pattern. And it's the Choose Your House socks. These are 2 different colours because I made 4 socks in these and they were all in the house colours from Harry Potter. And Bryony's got the other pair and I've got this pair. And I've worn these tons, absolutely tons. So this was the Choose Your House pattern. And these have been in the washer loads and they're just, they still look really good. You know, the yarn from memory, it's one of those yarns that's multi-plied. I think it's got like maybe 8 plies or something. So the only thing I would say, and I can't recall if this is the case, but it might be a little bit splitty. I don't know until I knit it again because I knit these years ago. But to be fair, I knit 4 socks and I don't recall it being that problematic for me. So it's really good yarn, and like I said, it's been discontinued, but you can find it still. So I wanted to mention it in case you want to go and look for it, in case you're interested in making DK weight socks, you want to stash some yarn away or whatever. And the colours they do, it's amazing. They're all named after artists. So things like Monet and what's the one, Chagall. My very old car is Chagall Blue, so it's all named after artists, Michelangelo, things like that. So I've ordered a bunch. So I'll show you those maybe next time, some of those colours. When I get the yarn, I'll be able to show you. But I wanted to mention that this one is a really good yarn. That's not the one I'm using today for Dan's socks, because what I'm using is the very lovely Drops Fiesta. Because you'll know that I'm also obsessed with this yarn because I made 2 pairs of socks for me out of this last year. Love them. Wore them all through the sort of colder months with my pyjamas. Absolutely lovely socks. And I had 2 balls in my stash of the watermelon colourway, which is this one. So it's like a green with hints of blue and pink. So it's Drops Fiesta. So I'm using 2 balls of watermelon. And then I've got a ball each, so it comes in 50 gram balls. So I'm using a ball each of these colours for the contrasts, because there's 2 contrast colours in these socks. So the pink is cerise and the blue, I think, is denim. I think it was denim. And I've finished 1 sock and I'm on to the second, because these are so quick because they're DK weight. So I'll show you the sock I've finished. So here's the first sock. Isn't it lovely? So this is obviously big because it's for Dan, but I popped in a really fun little texture pattern, just a simple texture, but what it does is it gives you something to do, and it also makes it easy to track your rounds because you can just count the repeats, which is really easy. The reason I've put those stripes in is because I thought I was going to run out of the main colour. I did have a little bit left of that 50 gram ball. So this sock took almost the full 50 gram ball and then those 2 contrast colours. I've weighed this and I think it was like 65 grams, I think, the sock. It was something like that. It was in the high 60s, the whole sock. So I definitely would not have had enough with just 1 ball in the main colour. I would have needed, so altogether, if I was just going to use the main colour, I would have needed 3, wouldn't I? Yeah. But I thought it would be fun to add these contrast pops in. So we did the rib in the pink, heel in the blue, put in these fun stripes on the foot, and then the toe in the blue. So what I had to do for this sock, this is the second one I cast on, because I did cast it on originally using what I thought would be the right stitch count for Dan for DK weight. However, they were too big. Can you believe that? They were too big. So I decided to use a stitch count that I don't think I've ever used before. So these are 60 stitches. Now, normally for a DK weight sock, it varies between patterns as to what stitch count designers choose to use. But let's say, for example, the 64 stitch sock on a normal fingering weight, that one, generally speaking, in DK would be 48 stitches. So using that maths, you would then presume that the size up from that would equate to the 72 stitches of a fingering weight, but I didn't find that that would work for Dan. So this would technically be an extra large size. So, I am working on a DK weight pattern, and what I'm doing basically is I've sort of gone back to the beginning of DK weight socks, if you like, and just rethinking the whole thing and looking at the stitch counts and looking at heels. And I've redone my toe actually in the Choose Your House socks. I always found that the toe was a little bit short. So I've re-looked at that, changed it, and you can see this one is much longer than on there. So I'm refreshing the whole DK weight thing, and also including an extra large size, because Dan can't be the only one with great big feet in the world, can he? But he's tried this one on. I was so nervous, wasn't I, knitting this? I was like, oh gosh, is it going to fit? It's not going to fit. It's going to be this, going to be that. And you put it on your foot and it fits brilliantly well, fits perfectly. So I'm absolutely thrilled. So I've got the second one on the go, and knit all of this in one morning, really. And I would never be able to do that, never be able to knit the cuff and the leg of a sock for Dan, 72 stitches in one morning. Just no way. Because not only is it less stitches, it's less rows, because, your gauge is bigger. So it's a plus all round. Generally speaking, apart from like really warm days, you've just been wearing your thicker socks all the time, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been, the interesting thing about this is it's all right saying, it's great to knit these and it takes less time and all that. But if they can't be worn unless you would think it's really cold, then what's the point? Because you need fingering weight more. Well, we've discovered through realising that I was going through lots of fingering weight socks, okay, right, well, what I'm going to do is this winter, I'm just not going to touch my fingering weight socks, and I'll just wear the DK weight ones or the thicker ones.
Yeah.
So started wearing the thicker ones, and I've got fingering weight socks on today. Well, I'm going to be changing them because I feel a tiny bit cold, and it's not freezing today at all.
No.
What I've learned is that I can wear those. I didn't think I could wear those thick socks on as warmer days as that I do, and I also didn't think I could wear them in shoes easily. And I can do both.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, they're more comfortable because there's more material between me and the floor.
More cushy. Yeah.
And I'm just enjoying wearing them a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, when it's like 25 plus, you don't want DK weight socks on.
No.
But that's not that often here.
No.
So it's amazing.
Yeah, because the ones you've got, the thicker ones you've got actually are thicker than DK. I've never knit you DK socks before. The ones that Dan wears are generally, there's one that's an Aran weight, and then there's some that are more, definitely worsted going towards Aran weight. They're definitely thicker than a DK.
Well, look, I think you can forget about fingering weight for a while.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do.
DK and chunky. I'd love a new pair of...
The really thick ones.
Yeah, for winter.
For winter.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. The other thing that's just making this a joy, and I've mentioned this before when I knit my Fiesta socks, is the needles that I'm using. And I use double points to knit DK weight socks, and I just find it's just the combination of double points and a thicker yarn, DK weight. It's just absolute heaven for me. And these ones are my favourites. They're Chowgu bamboos, and I use 3.25mm. And they're absolutely fantastic needles. I've used this actual pair now to knit, I don't know how many pairs. I've had this pair of needles for quite some time. They're just lovely. They've got a nice point. How can I show you this? Against my hand, maybe it's the best. And when you first start using them, they are quite draggy because it's bamboo. And bamboo has a sort of vertical formation to it. Do you know what I mean? When you look at it, if you think of a bamboo, growing in the wild, it has the vertical sort of striations down it. So it does have quite a lot of drag when you first start using them. But the more you use them, the more the needles will polish. the yarn just naturally polishes them. And now they're just as smooth as anything. They still have that little bit of drag, which I find is really useful for when you're changing over your needles, because for me, it allows you a bit of grip, and it means you get a really perfect join. I don't have any problems with ladders. Couldn't think of the word. If you see how lovely and seamless that is. And it's just so pleasant. It's just so pleasant knitting them, which, is a whole huge experience for me, knitting pleasant socks for Dan and being able to get them done relatively quickly, I'd knit through. I did take a picture of it, actually, of the first sock. I just did it plain, and I knit through. I think I was on the foot, and I just realised it was just so massive. So I actually made the decision to pull it out and start again. So I originally cast them on the 22nd of April, and then I ripped them out and recast them on the 27th of April. I'll have these finished probably within the next few days. I'll have this pair finished. Maybe what I'll do is wait for this sheepy's yarn to come, and maybe I'll start another pair using this for Dan. Because I don't have any more of the Drops Fiesta. So I could order some more Drops Fiesta and start another pair for him, but it makes more sense really to wait for this yarn. And I ordered it in some lovely colours, so maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just wait for that order to arrive and then start him another pair. Because the two yarn bases, the Fiesta and this one, are quite different in their construction, so I think that will be interesting to compare. But the list that I'm making, it's got all sorts of yarns on there, and what I did, you can do it yourself quite easily. I went on to Wool Warehouse because I find that their stock is, they've got a really wide range of brands and yarn types and everything. So if you go into Wool Warehouse and then just search DK and then filter it so that it's wool blend, and just have a look what comes up, and then just go down them all and just see whether you think the blend would be suitable. I think there was a Sirdar one, there was King Cole, Stylecraft, I think, and some of them lean quite heavily acrylic. So if you, I think there's one called Stylecraft Life DK, which is a 75-25, but it's the other way. So it's 75 acrylic, 25 wool. And that would be super hard wearing, wouldn't it? It's virtually nearly all acrylic. And I know some people don't like using acrylic, so, the choice is yours. But it would make a really hard wearing pair of socks, but not something that you would instantly gravitate towards. I think because these manufacturers don't market them, if you like, specifically for socks, because if they were to do that, people wouldn't buy it, would they, for knitting jumpers? So I understand why they don't do it. But if you just have a look and just think to yourself, well, that would work for socks, they're all generally multi-plied. When I say that, multi-plied, so this is a 4-ply, this one I think is an 8-ply, then they would be really good for socks. So I think just think to yourself, I'm not necessarily looking for a yarn which says socks on it. Just, use your brain and think, well, that would work for socks. I'm going to give that a go. Why not? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so definitely for you, I think this might be the answer.
Yeah,
I'm just rejoicing in the thought of it,
Yeah, I think the key to it is understanding how you wear them.
Yes.
If you know how you wear them, then you know what socks are going to work best for you.
Yeah.
And if you're more harder wearing and you wear them a lot, then sometimes a thicker weight is going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And even if you don't know, if you're gift knitting socks as well, I think it's a great weight of yarn. Because even if they don't wear them in shoes, a person, that they can wear them around the house as like sort of slipper socks and just have a lovely time doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is the end of a rather epic pick of the project.
Absolutely. Loving it. Loving DPNing with my DK weight socks. I feel like I should make a rap out of it.
So as we say goodbye to the pick of the projects, it's time for us to find out, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Yes, indeed. So I've got two things. The first is a pair of socks.
Oh.
And these are lovely. These are going...
Blackberry Crush.
Yeah, I know. These are going straight into my sock stash for this year. But yeah, I finished a pair of the short and sweet socks, which is a pattern of mine that I recently published. But this time I knit blackberry socks. So I'd started these last time, hadn't I? So I've finished these now. This yarn colourway I dyed myself, and our patrons can actually now watch me do that. You can see how to dye this colourway for yourself. But yeah, this is the short and sweet. I just added in my butterfly heel instead of the heel that's in the pattern, just for a change with these ones. But it just has a sweet little eyelet pattern. You can see that, to resemble the little seeds on strawberries or blackberries or anything really. I mean, you could knit a pair of these using any really fruit or vegetable reference. I think that would be fun. Raspberries are another one, aren't they? They're a sort of deeper, raspberries are a different colour to strawberries, aren't they? They're more sort of deeper red, erring slightly towards, not purple, but yeah, just a deeper red. Gooseberries would be fun, wouldn't it? That sort of green colour, 2 shades of green maybe. So there's lots of different options that you can do. But yeah, this pair is for me, and these ones will be going into my sock stash.
Amazing.
I can't think how many pairs I've got now for my sock stash. Maybe 4, 5, something like that. But very happy to add those ones.
The next project is the most amazing project ever. We were out filming for our summer of stitching, which commences on the 3rd of June.
Less than a month now.
And we got some just gorgeous footage of this next finished object.
Welcome everybody to the Summer of Stitching 2025. So this is my completed 100-acre blanket. Look how lovely it looks. All finished. This is a reimagined mitered square blanket that I've designed. Here's the finished blanket, looking just beautiful. And this blanket is going to be the knitted design for our summer of stitching. So as Dan said, that starts on the 3rd of June, so you could be casting this on the 3rd of June.
It's available to silver, gold and platinum patrons, like all our summer of stitching events.
Yeah, like I said, I've reimagined the mitered square blanket and changed lots of things to come up with a design that gives you a different feel for knitting your mitered square blankets. And, you know, they've been around a long time, haven't they? Everybody, I know a lot of people still really love knitting mitered square blankets, but it's nice sometimes, isn't it, to have a fresh look at it and to see if you can do it in a different way to re-energise you, let's say, for knitting a mitered square blanket. And I know actually from the feedback we've had from some of our patrons that a lot of people haven't ever knit one. So that's amazing, isn't it? I think you always presume with this sort of a pattern that everybody's made one of those, you know. Not the case. So I know there's lots of people who are looking forward to starting their first one.
So what were the key differences again?
So the key differences are that the mitered decreases on this blanket form a zigzag across the blanket. So rather than the decreases all going in one direction across the blanket, which is typical of a mitered square blanket, these form zigzags going all the way across, which is super fun. But then also this is constructed in vertical strips rather than horizontal, which is more typical, or centre out. So this is vertical strips and you snake your way across. So you go bottom to top and then start at the top and go top to bottom and then bottom to top, top to bottom, and you snake your way across like that. And by doing it using that method, you get zigzags going across your blanket, which is super fun. And then I also looked at the way that the squares join here. because I wanted to get a really nice crisp join so that they all line up exactly, because I wanted it to have a look of like a fabric patchwork blanket, which, you know, when you sew those together, generally you'll get that really nice crisp line, won't you? So I wanted it to have more of that look, and I'm really happy with how that came out. And then finally, the border is different as well. It gives the look of an I-cord. It's got that nice, just slim, simple edge, but it's not an I-cord, and it's really quick to do, much less tedious, let's say, than an I-cord, because an I-cord does take some time, doesn't it? And it's very repetitive, very, you know, it's a bit of a slog. This one, I could have knit the whole border all the way around easily in a day. And it, you know, it's not, to me, it's not a bother. It gives lovely sharp corners as well, which is nice. So yeah, lots and lots of things different with this blanket. There's a whole host of video tutorials showing you exactly how to do everything.
I think there's 9 tutorials in total, but we'll be putting them out through the course of June in 5 sittings.
Yeah.
So and there's lots of additional content as well to go with it. Lots of sort of summer of stitching in the 100-acre wood.
Yes,
fun and games.
Yeah, it was lovely. We filmed it all, like I say, on this hot sunny day, and we were sat in a really nice location, loads of trees, and there's a little bridge, and it was just so nice. So yeah, there's lots of chatting from me. There's lots of then tutorials. There's some book reading as well that's relevant to each of the sections. So all of that's is really lovely, really exciting. Can't wait to get cracking. So this is only the first project as well of Summer of Stitching. There's 2 more that follow this.
In June and July.
In July and August. We're going to be making a project bag in July that will house your blanket. And then in August, we're going to be doing some slow stitching. So I will show you the project bag that we're going to be making, but I'll show that towards probably middle of June. I would say middle to end of June, I'll show you the project bag that we're going to be making, because that's a whole other design that I spent quite a lot of time coming up with to make it just the perfect bag for, first of all, a large project like this, but also the perfect sort of take anywhere summer bag. Yeah.
Cool. What a wonderful What's Off Your Needles. Now it's time for the wonderfulness to continue as we get back to my perfect socks.
Welcome back, everybody, to my perfect socks. So our main colour is now all done. It's time now to dye up the coordinating colour. So we're going to get to that, we're going to get it dyed up, and then excitedly it'll be time to sit down, we're going to have a chat about the socks, and then we're going to get to the knitting. Right, so here we go with our minis then. So I've got in my pot, I've got only about 1/3 of water. It's only 2 mini skeins, so you don't need a lot of water really. And some more citric acid. So because I'm doing red, I did put like a full tablespoon in here, because red again is another colour that we really want to make sure is fully fixed to the yarn. So I'm going to put some dye into the pot is the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to take my fire red, I'm going to put about 1/2 in there, maybe just a tad more than 1/2. There you go, drop that in. Look at that. This is such an intense, beautiful red. I just like to sort of watch it do its thing for a minute. It's so pretty. But we can go in with our big spoon and just help it absorb in a little bit. It looks a bit like Ribena, doesn't it? So just keep stirring until all of that dye is absorbed. And I've got the heat up quite high at the moment. We just want it really nice and hot when we put the yarn in. That looks good. And if you just sort of give it a minute after you've stopped stirring, you'll be able to see if any bits of dye gather at the bottom if you need to give it another stir. That looks good. Looks nice and sort of clear of dye powder. Okay, so I'm going to grab my minis. So I've just got 2 20-gram minis as usual on here. And just give them a little shake again. I always check because I always think, gosh, is there 2 on there? There is. Because when it's wet, it looks like nothing. Okay, and now we're just going to drop it in. Look at that. Ooh. And then as it goes in, I do this fairly slowly so that we get a nice tone going on. And then once it's all in, lift it up and then move it to the other end. Drop it back in. And then just keep moving it around. And that action of putting it in slowly in the first instance will mean that we do get some tones running through there, even though it's now all in the dye pot. And I think this is probably going to be enough dye. Yeah, looking at the intensity of the red, I would say such a beautiful red. Look at that. Isn't it gorgeous? And you can see actually that the amount of dye in the pot is dissipating quite quickly. So that is telling us that it's really absorbing into that yarn really well. It's nearly all gone and we've got a really lovely red colour there. So you can kind of leave it alone now. And once again, just bring it up to temperature. So bring it up to the point of it simmering. Give it a simmer for about 5 minutes. Because you know then it's been at 100 degrees, it can't get really any hotter than that. And then turn it off, pop it outside to cool down with our main colour. So that's our yarn all dry and ready to be knitted. So it's time now to get it skeined up and get that yarn on our needles. Right, so we have got our beautiful yarn all skeined up. I like to show it in the skein because I think skeining yarn up just shows it off to its prettiest possibilities, doesn't it? And doesn't it look just gorgeous? Doesn't this make the most beautiful like sock set or, you know, cowl or mitt or anything, as I mentioned before? I think you could even make a small shawl out of this. I have seen some patterns that are designed for a sock set. And the colours are just lovely, aren't they? Perfect sort of Christmassy colours as well, or autumnal, to be fair. And it just looks beautiful, that yarn. So we're saving our mini and we'll see what that looks like with all of the others in a little bit. But we're now going to wind this main skein. I can't wait to start this one. The depth of tonality in this, it's just absolutely beautiful. So let's just get ourselves situated. So let's get this on to the Swift and get winding, because we can't start knitting, can we, until we've wound this yarn. I do remember that just made me think of a time when I bought some yarn for my mum to knit me a cardigan, right? I think this cardigan is more of a jacket. I think it might still be in the loft somewhere. And it was this massive sort of cabled thing. And I wasn't really knitting at the time, it's years ago. The yarn that I got for her, for starters, it was the wrong weight. It was a trunky weight, but the one I got wasn't right. But I didn't know about these things at the time. And I gave her this yarn. She didn't like the fact that it was in hanks because she would normally just buy yarn in, you know, the old-fashioned ball type. I had no idea. It's just funny, isn't it, how you think at the time. I had no idea really why this yarn was in a skein like that. I didn't even know it was called a skein, to be honest. I always called them hanks. So it's interesting, isn't it, how something just triggers a memory like that. But yeah, this jacket thing just came out absolutely enormous. Anyway, random waffle over. Let's get winding and hope for the best. It just looks so beautiful on the Swift. This golden colour is absolutely gorgeous. There we go. Hey, that went quite well. Let's have a look, shall we? I just felt it slip once. Yeah, there's a bit there where it sort of slipped. I just sort of took it in. Oh my goodness, it looks beautiful. Look at that colour. Can you see that? It's absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, that's it all wound up, and excitedly now we can get to knitting the next section in our socks. Okay, so we are ready to go now. Look at our beautiful yarn. Predictably, I'm going to say I'd like a whole pair of socks in this yarn because it's so lovely, isn't it? Oh, so nice. The other thing that struck me, right, when I looked at these was that they kind of look like Pooh Bear, which made me love them even more. So we're ready now to start knitting our sock. So I've got one of them here. I do have two socks. Here's the other one, looking exactly the same. Oh, before we start on our sock, we need to just have a look, don't we, at the minis, our mini parade. So here are all the lovely colours. So we have got a rainbow thing going on now, haven't we? Definitely got a rainbow going on. I need an indigo, I think, in here, don't I? But I am now sort of thinking in my head that I'm trying to get some kind of lovely rainbow, and so far it looks beautiful, doesn't it? So that's our minis. So we now, of course, need to get cracking on our sock. So when we left it, I have almost finished the gusset decreases. I've got 3 to go. I've got 19 stitches here on this side of the marker, so I've got 3 gusset decreases to go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start us off, and then I will quickly whip through those rounds, and then I can show you how to reorientate your stitches when you work in Magic Loop. If you've done it in the way that I've done it, I know some people don't arrange their stitches like this. So we need to get going. Now what I did when I cut this last colour was I left a nice long tail, because the changeover of our colours happens here at what is actually the beginning of our round officially. That's where we've been changing all the colours down here. So I left a long enough tail just to work to this point, and it's at that point then that I will change the colour. So let's get going, and I think, like I said, I think I'm on a decrease round here. It feels such a long time since I've worked on these socks, and I just thought that the gold would look lovely coming after this sort of very multicoloured really yarn, that previous one with all of the greens and purples and blues, and it does have some sort of darker browns, so I thought it would just look really nice following, and it gets us away from, we've gone through sort of pinks and oranges and greens, and it's nice now to get into a different colour. So there we go, with 3 before. So knit 2 together, knit 1, slip, and now we're done with that old yarn. So bring in the new colour. So leave a tail of yarn, loop it over, and away we go. Make sure you're knitting with the right end. So I'm almost to the end of this needle. So we just turn, and all of these ends, don't worry about your ends, we're going to deal with those afterwards. I do have a particular technique for weaving in the ends, and I will show you that when we've finished the sock. So we now can just work down the other side to complete this round. So I will work to the marker. The needles I'm using, I'm sure I will have said at the beginning, but the needles I'm using, just as a reminder, are Addy Lace. They're my favourite Magic Loop needles for socks. Okay, other side. So an SSK. I'm actually not keen on working SSKs. Wherever I can, I replace them with slip one, knit one, pass slip stitch over, because I find it much less faff. But we've done an SSK today. I'm loving this yarn already. It's such a rich, deep colour. So we are underway now. So what I'm now going to do is I'll just quickly zip through the rest of those decreases that I've got left to go, and then I'll come straight back and I'm going to show you how to just reorientate your stitches. Okay, so I have knit my gusset decreases. They're completed now. Dan made me a sneaky little frothy coffee, so that was very delicious. So I'm all fueled up and just ready now to show you how to reorientate yourself to the way we were when we were up here, basically in the correct orientation to continue down the foot. So what I'm going to do is just knit to that first marker. This yarn is looking so lovely. Okay, and we can now remove the marker. Don't need that anymore. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this needle out and pop all the stitches around here, pull this needle out and put all the stitches around here. So you just basically pull on your needles. So pull on that one, pull on that one, turn it back round, and now what you will see is that your marker over here shows you where the other side of the instep is. So you just need to pinch your cord at that point so that your marker's now dangling here. Pull it across, pop your needles in, and we are back to working in the correct orientation. So yeah, I am now just going to finish off my 9 rounds. I'm working 9 rounds of each of my colours, and then I'll go over to the other sock and I'll do exactly the same thing. The only thing to remember when you work across here and turn for the next side, don't forget you've got your marker here on your cable. The number of these markers I've lost down the side of sofas and chairs and all sorts because I've forgotten that it's on there, and it goes flying off and you don't even see it. So I really hope if you dye up this colourway, if you're following along with me, that you enjoy this one. It's definitely one of my favourites. I'm going to stop saying that. They're all my favourites, aren't they? You know that whatever I dye up next, I'm going to say that's my favourite. But this one truly is a favourite. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy if you are dyeing along. Hope you enjoy dyeing it. Or if you just go into your stash and finding something similar, then get hunting for that. Or whatever you're doing really, if you're just watching and enjoying watching, then I appreciate all of you. It's just fantastic. I'm so enjoying this series. So yeah, there we go. That's Brinkley is my dog. I don't know what's going to be next. I need to dig into that bag of minis that I've got and decide what's going to come next. So that's really fun for me, as I said earlier. Thank you all for watching so much, and I will see you back, of course, next time for more of my perfect socks.
What a pair of colourways, and it couldn't be more appropriate, could it? We're about to start a summer of stitching, a summer in 100-acre woods.
Oh, yes.
And you created some poo yarn.
I know, that was completely accidental.
Amazing.
Look, Pooh's here and Tigger. They're here today. And yeah, I only realised at the end that this yarn kind of looks like Pooh Bear. Look. But anyway, so what shall I show the socks first, or shall I just give you another flash of the yarn? I've got the yarn here, haven't I? So I'll show you again. So here's that lovely golden retriever yarn. Oh, such a gorgeous, gorgeous, rich colour. And yeah, Dan's got his eye on this. So
Yeah.
And I do, if you wanted to use red, I do have some other reds in my stash you could use. You want to make Pooh Bear socks?
Yeah, with this, the bit at the top.
Yeah, you can't have these reds because I want these. Yeah. And I've finished knitting the section on the socks. So I've got them both here. It's hard to show you them. You can see I've got two. Let me just show you one because then it's easier, isn't it? So here's where we're up to. And that gold is just so lovely, following that kind of bluey greeny colour. And then the heel is obviously on the back. You can't see that now because I'm back working down the foot now. We've finished the gusset decreases. Such a lovely colour. And you can see the tones in it, can't you?
Yeah, definitely.
If I hold that close, you can see where that green has hit it. Can you see that? There, look. Can you see the tones that the green gives it? It just sort of darkens areas. So pretty.
Gorgeous. Another wonderful episode of My Perfect Socks. I can't wait to see how these finish off, actually, because you've been building up and getting more and more excited. That's 7 in total you've done.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we've done 7, so 5 more to go.
Yeah.
So 4 more on the foot and then the toe.
Amazing.
And I'll have another pair of short socks for my sock stash.
So My Perfect Socks is back on the 6th of June because next time the Stately era returns and we're hitting the townhouse. Very, very exciting. It's the most overlooked part of the sort of stately era because anyone who had a stately home, at times they did need to be in the city on business. So what they did was they miniaturised exactly what they'd got out wherever their big stately home was and they put it in the city. So it's going to be really fun exploring a really gorgeous townhouse.
It is gorgeous. We went together, didn't we, to this one, and it's just lovely. And I actually think I prefer a townhouse to a great big stately
Well, it's more
home.
livable.
You can imagine living in it. You can absolutely imagine living in it. It's still huge, but, you know, you can see yourself in it.
So that's coming next time, and My Perfect Socks back on the 6th of June.
Yes.
It's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits!
So yes, the Blackberry Crust tutorial, it came out earlier on this week. That's available to watch now.
Yeah.
Patrons are absolutely loving it. Knitability's coming out really soon too. We've got a really sort of bumper, exciting issue.
Yeah.
All the usual features. There's designers and there's maker interviews and there's articles from patrons, but then there's a really sort of big feature on the build up to the summer of stitching, which is great. And this month we're going to debut a new strand to our video content. We trialled it on our recent patron exclusive show, which came out at the end of last month, and it's now going to go into our regular production. We're going to produce once a season. We're going to produce a gardening video. So the first one that we put out in that patron only show, I've actually made some tweaks to it, improved it quite a bit, because if it's going to go out in our sort of mainstream production, we needed to sort of make it even better than what went out in that show. So I've done that, and that's going to get published later on this month too.
Lovely.
So very exciting month. Yeah, the gardening tutorial.
It's not tutorial.
The gardening show went down an absolute storm.
It's just
People loved it.
It's just a little look at our flower border that we created a couple of years ago now, isn't it? Almost nearly 2 years ago, and just to see how it's coming on, and it's interesting for us to see how it's grown and developed, and we've made some changes to it. Some things didn't work and we've replaced them and things like that. So yeah, it's lovely.
Cool. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
What an exciting show. And we'll see you in 2 weeks with a brand new show featuring Britain, the Stately era.
See you soon, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, that was rubbish.
You didn't say what?
1, 2. It seems like an expedition to me, doesn't it? Oh, that was awful, Dan. Okay, I'm going to start again. He looks a bit like. Did anybody see Gardener's World? What was his dog called? The one that died. He was so lovely. Purple, and then mate one. Was that thing that just fell? It began with a Nigel. He looks a bit like Nigel, Monty Don's dog, just as a reference point as well. I didn't actually like Ribena very much. It's the blackcurrant one, that, isn't it? Ribena. I'm not keen on black currants. That's a random thought for you.